Ever wonder why Hollywood keeps rewriting history? While most war films take massive liberties with facts, a handful of directors risk their careers to show war exactly as it happened. Did you know one filmmaker used actual Nazi footage that was considered too disturbing for newsreels? Today we're counting down films that historians actually respect. Number 15. Tora, 1970. Hollywood usually treats Pearl Harbor like a backdrop for romance, but this Japanese-American co-production shocked viewers with its ruthless commitment to reality. Directed simultaneously by two teams, American Richard Fleischer and Japanese Kinji Fukasaku, the film recreated December 7, 1941, with obsessive precision. The production team even built full-scale Japanese aircraft carriers and hundreds of period-accurate planes. What makes this film revolutionary isn't just the practical effects, it's the balanced portrayal, showing both American unpreparedness and Japanese military strategy without demonizing either side. The Japanese sequences were actually censored in America because they humanized the enemy too effectively. Critics initially panned it as too technical, but military historians now consider it the definitive Pearl Harbor film. The most jaw-dropping fact: the massive explosion of the USS Arizona wasn't a special effect. The crew accidentally triggered a real, unplanned explosion during filming that injured several stuntmen. This terrifying accident became the film's most iconic shot. Producer Elmo Williams later admitted, "We caught lightning in a bottle. That explosion was real fear you're seeing on screen." The film's $25 million budget nearly bankrupted 20th Century Fox after disappointing box office returns. But decades later, the U.S. Naval Academy still shows it to cadets as the most accurate depiction of the attack that brought America into World War II. Number 14. The Longest Day, 1962. Before Saving Private Ryan, this black-and-white epic brought D-Day to screens with a documentary-like commitment to truth. Producer Darryl F. Zanuck mortgaged his house to fund this massive $10 million production, assembling a cast of 42 international stars, including John Wayne, Sean Connery, and Richard Burton. But the real stars were the actual D-Day veterans hired as technical advisors. What sets this film apart is its ruthless commitment to multiple perspectives. The Germans speak German, the French speak French. No Hollywood conventions here. Zanuck even hired directors from each country represented, American, British, German, to ensure cultural accuracy for each storyline. The production's obsession with details borders on insanity. They filmed on the actual Normandy beaches where thousands died. They used genuine landing craft from the invasion. Even the paratroopers' facial markings matched historical records. One scene recreates the accidental bombing of French civilians, something most American films carefully avoid mentioning. Former President Dwight Eisenhower, who commanded the real Operation Overlord, watched the film twice and declared it the only accurate D-Day movie he'd ever seen. The film's most haunting moment comes when American troops scale the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc, a sequence filmed with actual Rangers who made the climb on June 6, 1944. No stuntmen, just aging veterans recreating the most terrifying day of their lives. Number 13. Das Boot, 1981. Director Wolfgang Petersen didn't just make a submarine movie. He created a claustrophobic nightmare that had naval veterans suffering panic attacks in theaters. This German masterpiece follows a U-boat crew during the Battle of the Atlantic, showing the brutal reality of underwater warfare without an ounce of Hollywood glamour. The production's commitment to authenticity was borderline sadistic. The cast spent months in a meticulously recreated submarine, barely wider than their shoulders. Petersen refused to let them go outside during daytime shooting hours, forcing them to develop the same vitamin D deficiency and pallid skin as actual submariners. Cinematographer Jost Vacano invented a special harness allowing him to run through the narrow submarine corridors with a Steadicam, creating the film's signature kinetic style. Former U-boat commanders who viewed the film were stunned by its accuracy. One veteran broke down crying, saying, "This isn't a film. This is what it was really like." The movie's tensest sequence, a depth charge attack where crew members soil themselves in terror, came directly from survivor accounts too graphic for previous war films. Ironically, this German film about German soldiers became required viewing at the U.S. Naval Academy. American submarine commanders praised its technical accuracy, with one admiral noting, "There's no Hollywood nonsense. When they dive too deep, the hull really does creak like it's about to implode." The film's grueling 2.5-hour director's cut remains the definitive submarine warfare document, with historian Jordan Vows calling it the closest civilians will ever come to understanding underwater combat. Number 12, Come and See, 1985. Soviet director Ilem Klimov created what historians call the most unflinching depiction of Nazi atrocities ever filmed. This nightmarish journey follows teenage Belarusian boy Flyora as he witnesses the systematic destruction of his village during the Nazi occupation. Unlike Hollywood productions, there's no redemptive narrative or heroic stand, just the unfiltered horror of genocide. The production's methods were almost as disturbing as the subject matter. Klimov used real ammunition during battle scenes, putting his actors in genuine danger. Lead actor Alexei Kravchenko, just 14 years old, underwent hypnosis to protect him from psychological damage during filming. His traumatized expressions aren't acting. The director fired live rounds over the boy's head to capture authentic terror. The film's most controversial sequence depicts the Nazis burning villagers alive inside a church. A recreation of actual events documents in over 600 Belarusian villages. When shown historical footage during pre-production, several crew members quit, calling the material too horrific to recreate. Klimov insisted on authenticity, consulting with survivors and shooting on locations where mass killings occurred. Russian film historian Valery Fomin notes, "There's not a single false note. Every detail, from the soldiers' uniforms to the methods of killing, is meticulously researched." Western critics initially dismissed the film as Soviet propaganda until German military archives confirmed its depictions were historically accurate. Even today, some scenes remain so disturbing that several countries show edited versions. Historian Antony Beevor called it the only war film that shouldn't be viewed as entertainment. Number 11, Downfall, 2004. This German film did what seemed impossible. It humanized Hitler without excusing him. Director Oliver Hirschbiegel meticulously recreated the Führer's final days in his Berlin bunker, based entirely on eyewitness accounts and the testimony of Hitler's secretary Traudl Junge. The film created international controversy by showing Nazi leaders not as cartoonish villains, but as terrifyingly human monsters. Actor Bruno Ganz spent months studying Hitler's declining health, distinctive Austrian accent, and Parkinson's-like tremors. His portrayal was so accurate that historians use clips to demonstrate Hitler's actual mannerisms. The production rebuilt the Führer bunker exactly to specifications found in captured Nazi architectural plans, down to the paint colors and furniture placement. The film's most controversial scene, Hitler's suicide, was crafted after interviewing the last surviving witness who discovered the bodies. Even the method, cyanide while simultaneously firing a pistol, reflects the latest historical consensus rather than earlier simplified accounts. German historian Hans-Ulrich Wehler called it the most accurate portrayal of Hitler's final days in any medium. The film sparked fierce debate in Germany, where some critics argued humanizing Hitler was dangerous. Director Hirschbiegel defended his approach. Showing him as a human makes him more terrifying. Monsters aren't born, they're made. The film's unflinching depiction of Nazi suicide pacts and murder of children remains difficult viewing. Despite becoming an internet meme generator, Downfall stands as what Holocaust historian Deborah Lipstadt calls essential viewing for understanding how ordinary Germans followed Hitler into madness. Number 10. Dunkirk, 2017. Christopher Nolan reinvented the war film by stripping away everything but the raw experience of survival. Unlike most WWII epics, Dunkirk features minimal dialogue, no backstories, and no scenes of generals moving pieces on maps. This ruthless focus on immediate experience mirrors actual veteran accounts of the evacuation, where most soldiers had no idea of the larger strategic situation. Nolan's commitment to accuracy bordered on obsession. He used actual vintage ships from the evacuation, including the 43-foot yacht Moonstone, which rescued soldiers in 1940. Aerial combat scenes feature real Spitfires instead of CGI, with IMAX cameras mounted inside cockpits to capture authentic pilot perspectives. Even the film's color palette, desaturated blues and grays, matches actual wartime photography from Dunkirk Beach. Veterans of the actual evacuation were stunned by the film's accuracy. 97-year-old Ken Sturdy, who served as a signal boy during the real Dunkirk, wept after a screening. It didn't just show what happened, it showed how it felt. The film captures often overlooked details, like soldiers' confusion about title schedules and the practice of removing boots before boarding rescue ships. Historian Joshua Levine, who served as the film's technical advisor, praised Nolan's insistence on historical precision. Even the seemingly minor details, the weight of weapons, the thickness of wool uniforms, how long it takes to bandage a wound without modern medical supplies, these things matter. The film's most controversial choice, showing British soldiers refusing to help French allies aboard rescue boats, reflects uncomfortable historical truth, usually sanitized from Allied narratives. Number 9. Stalingrad, 1993. This German-produced masterpiece does what seemed impossible. It shows the Eastern Front's brutal winter warfare with unfiltered realism. Director Joseph Vilsmeyer follows a Wehrmacht platoon from their confident advance into Russia through their gradual destruction in the war's deadliest battle. Unlike Hollywood films that glorify combat, Stalingrad shows war as a meat grinder that destroys everyone it touches. The production's commitment to historical detail was fanatical. Filming in sub-zero temperatures, actors wore actual Wehrmacht uniforms with period-appropriate layering systems. The costume department even recreated the desperate improvised winter gear German soldiers cobbled together when Hitler failed to supply proper cold weather equipment. Medical scenes show accurate field surgery techniques based on Wehrmacht medical manuals. The film's most shocking sequence depicts German soldiers executing Russian civilians, a war crime usually omitted from Western depictions of German troops. Military historian Robert Citino noted, "This might be the only mainstream film that accurately portrays how average Wehrmacht soldiers, not just SS, participated in atrocities." The film also shows German soldiers being executed by their own officers for attempted desertion, a fact documented in military archives but rarely depicted. What makes Stalingrad revolutionary is its balanced portrayal of Russian forces. Unlike Cold War-era films that portrayed Soviets as mindless hordes, the film shows their tactical sophistication and superior winter warfare training. Historians particularly praise the depiction of Soviet anti-tank tactics and urban combat methods. Russian film critic Mikhail Trofimenkov called it the first Western film to show the Eastern Front without propaganda distortions. Number 8. Schindler's List, 1993. Spielberg abandoned his usual sentimentality to create what Holocaust historians consider the most accurate mass-market depiction of the final solution. Shot in stark black and white on actual locations in Krakow, the film recreates the liquidation of the Jewish ghetto and operations at Płaszów concentration camp with documentary precision. The production's attention to historical detail was unprecedented. The film used the actual Oskar Schindler's factory building. The infamous scene where Nazi officer Eamon Goeth shoots prisoners from his balcony came directly from survivor testimonies and court records from Goeth's war crimes trial. Even the lists of names shown in the film were based on actual Schindler Jews documentation. What separates Schindler's List from other Holocaust films is its unflinching portrayal of the bureaucracy of genocide. The film shows how the Nazi death machine operated as a business, complete with accounting, logistics, and inventory management. Holocaust scholar Michael Berenbaum noted, Spielberg shows mass murder as a systematic process rather than just emotional scenes of cruelty. The film's most controversial element was its decision to show naked prisoners in delousing scenes and medical examinations, depictions some called exploitative. Spielberg defended these scenes as necessary. Dehumanization was central to the Nazi system. Stripping victims of clothing was the first step in stripping their humanity. Survivor Raina Finder, who appears on the actual Schindler's List, called the film almost too accurate after screening it. It wasn't a movie to me, it was my life on that screen. Number 7. The Battle of Britain, 1969. Most war films focus on ground combat, but this technical marvel accurately captures the first major military campaign fought entirely by air forces. Director Guy Hamilton, a former RAF officer, assembled the largest collection of airworthy Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Messerschmitts seen since 1940, creating what aviation historians call flying museum pieces engaged in actual combat maneuvers. The production's commitment to accuracy was staggering. They hired 12 pilots who had flown in the actual Battle of Britain as technical advisors. Air combat sequences were choreographed based on gun camera footage from real dogfights. Even radio communications used authentic RAF terminology and the correct squadron call signs from 1940. The film caused controversy by showing the RAF's initial tactical failures and equipment shortcomings, uncomfortable truths usually omitted from British war narratives. It accurately depicts how British pilots were often sent into combat with inadequate training, sometimes with less than 10 hours of flight time in their aircraft. Military historian Stephen Bungay called it the most technically accurate depiction of air combat operations ever filmed. What makes this film revolutionary is its balanced portrayal of German pilots, showing them as professionals rather than villains. The Luftwaffe sequences were filmed with identical attention to detail, including accurate German tactical formations and radio procedures. Former Messerschmitt pilot Adolf Galland, who served as technical advisor, praised the film for showing both sides as airmen doing their duty, not as propaganda caricatures. The film's dramatic recreation of the decisive September 15th raid on London is so accurate that the RAF uses modified clips in their training programs. Number 6. Letters from Iwo Jima, 2006. Clint Eastwood shattered decades of one-sided war narratives by showing the Battle of Iwo Jima entirely from the Japanese perspective. Shot almost entirely in Japanese with Japanese actors, the film was based on letters found in tunnels beneath the island and the memoirs of General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, who commanded Japanese forces during the battle. The production's commitment to historical authenticity was unprecedented for an American film about Japanese forces. Military historian Nicholas Evans Sarantakis noted, "Previous films portrayed Japanese soldiers as fanatical automatons. Eastwood shows them as humans following their own code of honor." The film accurately depicts the resource shortages facing Japanese defenders, including lack of water, medicine, and ammunition. What makes this film revolutionary is its unflinching portrayal of Japanese military culture. It shows the practice of seppuku, ritual suicide, without Western judgment, explaining its cultural context. The film depicts how Japanese soldiers were ordered to fight to the death rather than surrender, a policy documented in Imperial Japanese Army field manuals. Military historian Robert Burrell praised the film's nuanced understanding of Japanese defensive tactics, including their sophisticated tunnel systems and artillery placement. The film generated controversy in both America and Japan. Some American veterans groups criticized humanizing the enemy, while Japanese nationalists objected to showing Imperial soldiers experiencing doubt about their mission. Historian Tsuyoshi Hasegawa called it the first American film to accurately portray Japanese soldiers' conflicted relationship with their own military leadership. Even the film's desaturated color palette matches actual combat photography from Iwo Jima, where volcanic ash created a monochromatic landscape. Number 5. Anthropoid, 2016. This tense thriller depicts one of WWII's most daring resistance operations, the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, architect of the Holocaust and butcher of Prague. Unlike Hollywood versions of resistance stories, this British Czech production shows Operation Anthropoid without glamorization, based entirely on declassified SOE files and Czech military archives. Director Sean Ellis filmed in actual Prague locations where the events occurred, including the Church of St. Cyril and Methodius, where the assassins made their last stand. The production meticulously recreated 1942 Prague under Nazi occupation, from vehicle models to accurate German checkpoint procedures. Even the weapons used, including the modified British Sten guns that jammed during the assassination attempt, were exact replicas of those documented in operation reports. The film's most controversial aspect is its unflinching portrayal of Nazi reprisals. After Heydrich's death, Hitler ordered the complete destruction of the village of Lidice. The film shows this atrocity in detail, including the execution of all male inhabitants and deportation of women to concentration camps. Events often omitted from resistance narratives that focus only on heroism. Historian Callum MacDonald called it the first film to accurately balance resistance triumph with civilian costs. What makes Anthropoid revolutionary is its portrayal of psychological trauma. Unlike glamorized Hollywood resistance fighters, the real assassins Josef Gabčík and Jan Kubiš suffered extreme anxiety and doubt. The film shows their panic attacks and emotional breakdowns, details confirmed by SOE handlers' reports. Czech historian Wojciech Kinkel praised the film's psychological realism, noting that resistance fighters weren't superheroes, but ordinary men under extraordinary pressure. Number 4. The Thin Red Line, 1998. While most Pacific War films focus on flag-raising and hero moments, Terrence Malick created what military historians call the most accurate portrayal of jungle warfare psychology ever filmed. Based on James Jones's semi-autobiographical novel, the film follows C Company during the Guadalcanal campaign with a documentary-like attention to the mundane realities of combat. Unlike typical war films with clear battle lines and objectives, The Thin Red Line shows combat as chaotic and confusing. Soldiers often can't see the enemy, commands get contradicted, men die from random bullets rather than dramatic duels. Military historian Joseph Glathar called it the only mainstream film that accurately captures the disorientation of jungle warfare. The production's commitment to accuracy extended to every detail. Actors underwent actual military training under retired Marine Dale Dye. They learned period-appropriate weapon handling, radio protocols, and even how to properly wrap their boots to prevent jungle rot, a condition that disabled more American troops than Japanese bullets. The film shows soldiers suffering from malaria, heat exhaustion, and psychological breakdowns, all documented as the primary medical issues on Guadalcanal. What makes the film revolutionary is its portrayal of Japanese forces. Unlike earlier Pacific War films showing Japanese soldiers as faceless fanatics, The Thin Red Line depicts them suffering from the same hunger, fear, and confusion as Americans. The surrender scene, where starving Japanese soldiers approach American lines, was based on actual incidents documented in Marine Corps records. Historian Richard B. Frank called it the first American film to show Japanese troops as human beings, rather than propaganda caricatures. Number 3. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. This animated masterpiece delivers what historians consider the most accurate portrayal of Japanese civilian suffering during WWII. Director Isao Takahata based this devastating film on Akiyuki Nosaka's semi-autobiographical novel about 2 orphan children struggling to survive after American firebombing destroys their city. Unlike live-action war films that must recreate destroyed cities with sets or CGI, animation allowed Takahata to show the full scale of urban devastation. The film's attention to historical detail is extraordinary. It accurately depicts Japan's desperate food rationing system, showing how civilians exchanged heirlooms for black market rice. Medical scenes show period-accurate treatments for malnutrition, including the fatal mistake of feeding pure sugar to starving children. Even clothing details reflect historical reality. As the war progressed, traditional kimonos were replaced by simpler work clothes as fabric became scarce. What makes this film revolutionary is its unflinching portrayal of civilian bombing. The firebombing sequence shows exactly how American incendiary weapons functioned, creating unstoppable fire tornadoes that consumed entire neighborhoods. Military historian Michael S. Sherry called it more accurate than any live-action depiction of strategic bombing. The film shows civilians seeking shelter in water tanks, only to be boiled alive when the tanks heated up, a horrific detail documented in actual survivor accounts. The film generated controversy in both Japan and America. Some Japanese critics called it anti-war propaganda, while American viewers questioned whether it downplayed Japanese military aggression. Director Takahata, who survived the bombing of Okayama as a child, defended his focus. "I wanted to show what happened to ordinary Japanese who had no say in the war." Historian John Dower praised the film for showing the human cost of victory rarely acknowledged in Western narratives. Number 2. Son of Saul, 2015. Hungarian director Laszlo Nemes revolutionized Holocaust cinema with this claustrophobic masterpiece following a Jewish Sonderkommando forced to work in Auschwitz-Birkenau's gas chambers. Unlike previous Holocaust films that either sentimentalized or exploited suffering, Son of Saul uses tight, shallow-focus cinematography that mimics the psychological tunnel vision survivors described, developing to maintain sanity. The production's commitment to historical accuracy was absolute. The set, recreated Crematorium WWII, based on blueprints from SS archives and survivor testimony. The film shows the exact procedures used in the death camps, from the deceptive shower room signs to the precise method of body disposal. Even the multilingual cacophony, with characters speaking Hungarian, Yiddish, German, Polish, Russian, and Greek, reflects the actual linguistic environment of Auschwitz, where victims from across Europe were processed. What makes this film revolutionary is its refusal to aestheticize horror. Unlike Spielberg's more polished approach, Nemes keeps atrocities just out of focus at the frame's edge, exactly how survivors described forcing themselves to perceive their surroundings. Holocaust historian Robert Jan von Pelt called it the most accurate psychological portrayal of camp life ever filmed, noting that the main character's emotional detachment matches documented survivor coping mechanisms. The film generated controversy for its depiction of Jewish prisoners forced to assist in genocide. Some critics called it exploitative, while others praised its moral complexity. Former Sonderkommando member and historian Shlomo Venezia defended the film shortly before his death. It shows what was deliberately hidden, not just the mechanics of killing, but how the Nazis forced Jews to participate in their own destruction. The film's claustrophobic technique has since influenced historical documentaries seeking to recreate the psychological experience of traumatic events. Number 1. Conspiracy, 2001. This HBO film might be the most terrifying WWII movie ever made, and there's not a single battlefield scene. Director Frank Pearson recreated the Wannsee Conference, the 85-minute meeting where Nazi officials calmly planned the systematic murder of 11 million Jews over lunch and cognac. Unlike typical Holocaust films focusing on victims, Conspiracy shows the perpetrators in their mundane, bureaucratic environment. The script's historical accuracy is unprecedented. Nearly every line of dialogue comes directly from the actual conference minutes discovered after the war, supplemented by attendees' testimony at Nuremberg. The film shows exactly how the Nazis developed their euphemistic language of genocide, replacing words like killing with evacuation and special treatment. Historian Peter Longerich, who served as technical advisor, called it disturbingly accurate in showing how ordinary bureaucrats normalized mass murder. What makes this film revolutionary is its portrayal of evil as administrative rather than melodramatic. Kenneth Branagh's chilling performance as Reinhard Heydrich shows a man concerned with efficiency rather than ideology. The film accurately depicts how lawyers, railroad administrators, and civil servants coolly discussed practical problems of mass murder, from transportation logistics to legal jurisdiction issues. Holocaust scholar Deborah Lipstad praised the film for showing genocide as a bureaucratic process rather than an emotional outburst. The film's most disturbing aspect is its accurate portrayal of Nazi infighting. Different departments competed for control of the Jewish question, motivated by career advancement rather than pure hatred. This institutional competition accelerated the genocide, a historical fact often overlooked in more simplistic portrayals. Historian Christopher Browning noted, "The film correctly shows the Holocaust wasn't ordered from the top down, but emerged through bureaucratic initiative from the middle ranks, each office trying to demonstrate its efficiency. From bunker suicides to bureaucratic genocide planning, these films refuse to sanitize history's darkest chapter. But does brutal accuracy serve justice or just feed our darkest voyeurism? Which film shocked you most with its unfiltered reality? Did we miss any historically precise war films that deserve recognition? Drop your thoughts below and tell us. Would you rather watch comfortable Hollywood lies or historical truth in all its disturbing detail? The debate continues.